Welcome back to RBD Block Challenge. Today we are putting it all together, and I just have one last block to show you how to create. It's this simple pieced block, although you're going to have to make it 32 times. But when you put it together in the quilt, it makes this beautiful Irish chain. So previously we've created these 16 unique blocks. So today we're going to be creating this piece block, again, that makes this gorgeous Irish chain and just makes the blue blocks pop. I love this taupe color. Isn't it gorgeous? Isn't it going to be fun to finish your quilt? So you need to download the pattern on the Riley Blake Designs website, and it gives you instructions to create this piece block as well as putting the quilt together. But you will notice one empty space, and it says block of your choice. This is maker's choice. You get to choose what you put in that last quilt block. And it can be whatever you want. It can be a quilt block that you've designed, or you can double up on quilt blocks that we did in this series. This is the one I chose. I really loved how the butterfly turned out, so I put this in twice, and I loved how it looks. And so you can choose that block, or previously we had another block challenge last year. You can use a block from that challenge. Whatever you want to do, it's your quilt. So I'm going to put this aside. So let's get started on creating this basic block. Now you'll notice that there's 4 patches in the corners, and then there's this middle strip piece. That's what we're going to work on first, is this middle strip piece. Now there's a lot of strip piecing, there's a lot of chain piecing, and again, it's easy to do, it's just going to take you a little while. So the pattern tells you to take your B strips, and I previously cut off my selvages. You don't have to, but I tend to cut them off in the beginning. And then you're going to get your E strip and put them right sides together. Now sometimes you can get away with pressing this and make a temporary adhesive, but since it's such a long strip and you want it to be very accurate, I am going to press, and then I'm going to put a couple pins on as well. Okay, let's put a few pins in this. And make sure you have a really accurate 1/4 inch seam allowance. If I'm doing a lot of strip piecing, a lot of piecing work, sometimes I tend to do a scant 1/4 inch, which is just a few threads less. And so when it comes together, it usually works out beautifully. Okay, let's take the machine and sew. Okay, let's give it a good press. Now normally we would press to the dark side, but since we're going to nest our units together, the pattern will tell you to press to the light side. And you know, this is really high quality white fabric, so you're not going to see the darker fabric underneath, so that's not going to be a problem at all. So whatever side I'm pressing to, I put it away from me like that. I just kind of lift it up, just kind of finger press it really fast. I use the nose of my iron. Use a little clapper. Okay, that looks good. Let's add our next strip on. On the other side, right sides together, we add our other cream strip. Put a pin in this at the beginning. And I tend to just give it a quick press. Okay, still going to put a couple pins in there so it doesn't shift at all. And these, paying attention to these steps, just taking a little extra time makes a difference. Okay, let's go sew. Okay, let's give it a good press. Now let's open it up. And again, we are pressing to the white side. Just kind of give it a quick finger press. Okay, that is good to go for now. We're just going to set this aside. And then we're going to go to the next step, and then we'll cut that in a minute. We'll cut all together. So I'm going to put this over here. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to cut, or we're going to put together our D strip and our E strip. Now on this big strip, you only have to make 2 of those. And on the D and E, it says we have to make 16. So we're making a lot of these strips. Again, I just tend to press those. Okay, let's go to our pressing station. Just gonna set our stitches, which just means we're ironing out the wrinkles and preparing our fabric and our threads to be a little bit more workable. So now, this time we are pressing to the dark side. So we're going to lift it up. Again, I just run my finger along, do a quick finger press on this when I open it up. Sometimes it's easier to go all the way across on your strip. So now it's open, just like this. Giving you a few of my pressing tips. And now I'm going to take the nose of my iron like this. Just go along, and I take my clapper and follow along. Okay, I think we're good to go. Okay, this is done as well. So I'm just going to show you how to do one block today and just times it by 32. Okay, so let's start with this. We need to make 32 segments of 2.5 by 10.5. Now this should already measure 10.5. So let's measure that. It's right on at 10.5, right on. So again, I just used a scant 1/4 inch seam allowance. Sometimes if it's less than 10.5, your seam allowance is too big. Scant is just a couple threads less, and that looks perfect. And what I find super helpful, well, I'm gonna line this up and just cut my edge because it's off slightly. So let's just true it up right here. So that's good to go. I'm gonna get my and this is really helpful because this is already 2.5 inches. To have a 2.5 inch ruler is perfect. And we're just gonna cut 32 of these. Okay, that's our last cut. Again, you just need one of these per block, so you're gonna make 32 of them. Just get those organized like that. Okay, we'll put that to the side. And now we're gonna cut these for our 4 patches. Just trim off the ends, true it up a little bit. And they should measure 4.5 inches. They're right on, so we're good to go there. And now we're doing 2.5 inch strips. So again, that's why it's so helpful to have this 2.5 inch ruler. I always just, a reminder to line up your middle line with that so you're cutting straight and accurately. That way. Okay, you're going to do that for 16 different of these strips. And now we're going to start assembling our 4 patches. And because these are pressed to the dark side and they're opposite, they should nest perfectly. Still just put a pin in there if you'd prefer. And for 1 block, you're going to need 4 patches. Okay, let's take the machine and sew. We've chain pieced these together, so just clip the threads in between. Now there's been a lot of comments on show more pressing techniques, so I'm going to just talk about this. You can just open these up like this and press them to one side. But there's also another technique where if you want to, you know, kind of nest those seams a little bit and open them up, you just kind of pull to the side, and since those threads just kind of open up because they're just right on the edge, so it gives you a little give without going into your seams. You can just open up those threads right there at this intersection, and you can press it like this. So now, oops, give it just a little spritz. See how that fabric pulls in when you add water, so I'm careful to add water. So like that. So then it opens up like this. You have this little 4-patch within a 4-patch, and it does lie a little flatter. And then I let it cool underneath a clapper. So again, it's perfectly fine because you're making so many of these. In fact, you're making 128. So if you want to just press to one side, that's fine. Or again, let me just show you that, how it just opens up. Just kind of separate it, and those threads just give a little. So again, see that? You can use that technique on any times you have an intersection like a pinwheel, if you want to open up that center seam to create less bulk. That is a great thing to do. Now I'm going to get my rotating mat and this little trim up ruler. And we're going to make sure they are 4.5-inch square. That is looking good. There's nothing to trim on that. There's just a few little threads sticking outside, so I might as well get that. And I think it is helpful to be a little scant 4th inch. Now you look over here, there's just ever so slightly just some threads out there. Sometimes it adds up when you're making a whole quilt. Really, there's not much to trim, and if you cut them out accurately and done your scant 4th inch seam allowance, they should be right on. And your points should just line up. That's what you want from a 4-patch. So let's put this aside, and we can start laying out our quilt block. Well, all our parts. And for the Irish chain, to create the Irish chain pattern, you want to make sure your blocks are facing the right way. And you want that chain right in the center. Okay, so you need 4 blocks to each, or 4 units, 4 patches to every quilt block. So that's going to be lined up like that. And then you just need to grab 2 of your C rectangles like this. So see how easy this comes together? So we're going to make this unit, and then we're going to sew it all together. So let's just line that up. So I'm going to chain piece these 2 units. You would be chain piecing all of your 4 patches together just like this. So you're doing it all at once. Let's go sew. Okay. Just going to finger press that open. Now we have pressed that to the outside, so we would press that. Yep, that's how we want it. Just double check. That's why we told you to press to the cream side, and now we're going to press this to the white side. So it's going to be just opposite. Again, I would press all your chain piece blocks all at once. You would have mounds and mounds of these units. Okay, let's put our blocks, oops, let's make sure they're in the right place. We're going to flip this over, making sure Irish chain is going in the middle. That's the direction, so they'll all line up and make that pattern. And I usually just pin on one side so I know where I am starting my stitches. I'm going to stitch there and there. Let's go sew. Okay, let's clip our threads. Now we are pressing to the light side. So that means our seams are pressing in. Just check them out. We previously pressed before. That's counterintuitive to quilters. Just going to give them a press on this side. Again, pressing. And on that side. Repressing the other side. Letting it cool on the clapper. Okay, let that cool there. We've got our center strip. We just have 2 more seams. Again, you're doing these in mass. So be very mindful of placement of your quilt blocks. So that's going to go there. It's going to go there again, creating that chain effect. And this is where it matters where you pressed your seams. So see how that presses out. This is pressing in. And I just place a pin at those intersections. You have to give a little tug to make sure those nest. Give a little tug. They fit pretty nicely together. Okay, let's go press. It's got a little couple random threads right here. Take those off. So this time I am going to set those stitches. I'm going to press it open this way. Now take a look. This is what you want to see, is these corners perfectly lined up. So again, you get that beautiful chain look. Okay, last seam. Flip it over, right sides together, nest those seams, put pins at the intersections right there. And pins on the ends. Okay, let's come to our pressing station. Set our stitches. Now we're going to open it up. Just give it sometimes I just press it open, and those points are lining up perfectly. Again, make sure we just pressing that. While that's cooling off, I am going to get out a large rotating mat and our 10.5 inch square up ruler. Now it's going to be very important that these are accurate blocks because we have so many of them. So let's take a look. You can just line everything up. Just going to scoot that a little over in the center. and it's looking really good. So everything's lined up. I see just a few bits of fabric on that side. And plus, might as well rotate all the way around to get all my random threads off. Okay, and your quilt block is ready to go. Again, you just have to repeat that 32 times. I'll put this over here. And then you have 14 of these solid white blocks, 10.5-inch squared. And you can kind of take a look at the pattern and you alternate them top and bottom with the piece squares and the solids. So we would do that. I'm going to bring in all the blocks I have sewn. Oh, down here. Bring in all your designer blocks. I've already pieced 2 rows together, so we can talk about that. I'm going to hold it up like this. So you can see the top of the quilt and the bottom of the quilt are just the same. You're going to alternate your pieced block with your solid 10.5-inch squared piece, solid, and then you start getting into the designer blocks. You're going to start with a solid piece, designer, pieced, designer, pieced, and then solid. And then it goes down, and you're going to do 1 strip at a time, and then you get into just the pieced, designer, pieced, designer, pieced, designer, and then it starts alternating with these solid blocks, ending exactly how you started the quilt. And then it creates this beautiful Irish chain. It's so wonderful how it comes together. I'm just going to give you a few tips on pressing when you're assembling your strips. So when I'm assembling my strips, I know the white pieces on the top and the bottom, I'm going to press my seams out towards the piece blocks. That way, when we start bringing in our designer blocks, which there's usually a lot of piecing in there, the seams can flop out and they're going into the piece block because that's how we press that way. So when you're putting your strips together, you can nest your seams. See how those seams are nested because the white is going into the piece block and then your designer is going in. So all your seams will nest beautifully. When you're opening up and when you've got all your strips sewn together, how do you press your long strips? Well, just lay out your quilt. See how they naturally want to fall. And it looks like they want to fall that direction. So I'm going to press this entire seam going towards me. And you just do 1 strip at a time of your piece blocks. And just being very mindful of lining up, nesting those seams. That's going to be very important to have a continuous Irish chain. And you get such beautiful results like this quilt. Now we know many of you aren't using solid fabrics. You're using your own fabric choice, and we can't wait to see how your quilts come together because people are posting their blocks as they're working with them and as they're finishing the quilts. We can't wait to see how your quilt looks.